There are moments when the soul burns in silence, when your body craves what your spirit knows it must resist. You feel the pull, not only toward desire, but toward the edge of disobedience. And in that moment, Shaytan whispers that no one will know. But Ibn Arabi said, Allah is closer to you than the thought that tempts you. He sees the storm in your chest, the ache in your heart, the hunger in your flesh, and still, He calls you higher. Desire is not a sin, it is a test, a fire meant to purify, not consume. The question is not why you feel it, but what you do when it comes. Because every craving that shakes you is a door, and behind that door, Allah waits to see who you become when no one is watching. 1. Desire is not evil, it's energy misunderstood. Desire is one of Allah's most powerful creations, neither holy nor sinful by itself. It is energy, pure and raw, placed inside every soul to move it toward what it loves. Ibn Arabi said, all motion begins in longing. Even the seed that pushes through soil does so out of desire for light, to feel attraction, to crave connection. These are not flaws, they are forces waiting for direction. When desire awakens, the heart stands at a crossroads. One path leads downward to indulgence, the other upward to remembrance. The same energy that drives lust can drive worship if purified. The difference is not in the feeling, but in its destination. Ibn Arabi wrote, "The fire that burns you can also warm you. It depends on what you feed it. Desire is the test that reveals what you serve." Islam doesn't ask you to destroy desire, it teaches you to discipline it. The Prophet ﷺ was not ascetic in hatred of the world, he was balanced within it. He married, loved, felt, and yet never became a slave to his feelings. Ibn Arabi said, "The real does not ask you to kill your nature, but to polish it until it reflects him. Suppression breeds sickness, guidance breeds sanctity. Desire becomes dangerous only when it forgets its source. When the heart seeks pleasure without purpose, it loses its axis. But when it remembers Allah while feeling desire, it transforms passion into prayer." Ibn Arabi explained that every pull of the heart is secretly a call from the divine. You long for creation because you have forgotten the Creator in whose image they shine. Desire, then, is a misplaced remembrance. To understand desire is to understand duality. The body wants what is near, the soul yearns for what is eternal. These two forces wrestle within you, not to destroy one another, but to bring balance. Ibn Arabi wrote, "The servant walks between hunger and holiness. When you master that tension, you become whole. Desire becomes your teacher, reminding you of what you truly crave, not bodies, but belonging." The Sufi doesn't flee desire, he studies it. He asks, "What does this longing want from me?" Often he finds that every physical urge hides a spiritual hunger, the need to feel loved, seen, alive. Desire becomes corrupted only when we seek in people what can only be found in Allah. Ibn Arabi said, "He who loves the reflection more than the light will chase shadows forever." Awareness turns temptation into wisdom. Every form of desire carries divine intelligence. The yearning for touch mirrors the soul's need for connection. The hunger for beauty mirrors the heart's need for harmony. The pull toward intimacy mirrors the spirit's desire for union. The problem is not that you desire, it's that you stop at the form instead of following it to its source. The Sufi learns to trace every longing back to the beloved. When you feel the fire of craving rise, remember, it is not your enemy. It is your invitation. The body burns because it senses distance. The soul aches because it remembers nearness. Ibn Arabi said, "The pain of desire is the soul remembering paradise. So don't curse your hunger, redirect it. Turn that fire into dua, that pulse into remembrance. Every restraint is a step closer to intimacy with Allah." Those who mistake desire for evil wage war against their own design. They repress, hate, and fear what Allah placed within them as a bridge to understanding. But the Sufi knows you cannot transcend what you condemn. You can only transform it through awareness. Ibn Arabi wrote, "The same longing that ruins one heart raises another. What matters is not what you feel, but how you respond to what you feel." In the end, desire is proof of life, a sign that the heart still beats with yearning. It is Allah's whisper within you, saying, "Seek me, but seek me rightly." Every craving is a spark. If directed towards sin, it burns. If offered to Allah, it illuminates. Ibn Arabi taught that every soul carries two fires, one of passion, one of love. The Sufi's path is not to extinguish either, but to unite them until both burn only for him. 2. Shaytan turns need into addiction. Shaytan never attacks desire directly. He corrupts its direction. What begins as a natural need becomes a hunger without end. Ibn Arabi said, "The enemy does not extinguish light. He multiplies mirrors until you forget the source." When the heart stops remembering Allah, it starts worshiping the feeling itself. The need for love turns into lust. The desire for rest turns into laziness. What was once a blessing becomes bondage. Addiction is born the moment you forget why you want. Shaytan whispers, "Feed it once more and you'll be satisfied." Yet satisfaction never comes. He sells thirst as pleasure. Ibn Arabi taught that every addiction is just remembrance misplaced, a soul searching for Allah in the wrong direction. The body obeys the craving, but the heart remains starving. What you chase outside was always meant to be found within. Shaytan works not by force, but by distortion. He takes what is natural and exaggerates it until it owns you. A glance becomes curiosity, curiosity becomes habit, and habit becomes worship of desire itself. Ibn Arabi wrote, "The moment you bow to what tempts you, you forget who created it." Addiction begins when pleasure becomes purpose, when need forgets meaning. Every craving begins with absence. You feel empty, so you reach outward. But instead of turning to Allah, Shaytan convinces you to fill the void with moments that vanish. The more you consume, the hungrier you become. The Sufi sees through this trap. He knows the hunger is not for the body, but for the beloved. Ibn Arabi said, "The soul that remembers its source cannot be addicted to shadows." Addiction thrives in secrecy. Shaytan tells you no one will know. But Allah always knows. And He knows not to punish, but to pull you back. The shame that follows sin is not condemnation. It is mercy calling. Ibn Arabi explained that guilt is the soul's alarm, a signal that the heart still lives. The truly lost are not those who sin, but those who feel nothing after. The more you feed desire, the less it satisfies. This is the paradox Shaytan hides. He promises freedom through indulgence, but delivers chains. Ibn Arabi said, "Every pleasure not rooted in the real ends in pain." The believer begins to see this pattern, the instant rush, the empty calm, the repeating void. Recognition is the first crack in addiction's illusion. To break the cycle, the Sufi replaces reaction with reflection. He asks, "What am I really seeking?" Behind every addiction hides a pure intention that's been hijacked. The thirst for intimacy is the desire to be seen. The hunger for pleasure is the wish to feel alive. Ibn Arabi taught that awareness turns poison into medicine. The same need, purified, becomes devotion. Shaytan loses power when you meet your desire with remembrance. The moment you whisper, "Ya Allah," in the middle of temptation, his whisper fades. The Quran says, "Indeed, the remembrance of Allah protects from indecency and wrongdoing." Ibn Arabi described Dhikr as fire that burns the roots of obsession. You can't starve addiction by force, you heal it through light. Addiction ends not when the desire disappears, but when it returns to its rightful place, as a servant, not a master. The Prophet ﷺ said, "None of you truly believes until his desires follow what I have brought." The Sufi reads this not as suppression but as harmony, to feel deeply, yet stay aligned with divine rhythm. Ibn Arabi wrote, "True freedom is obedience willingly chosen." In the end, Shaytan can only amplify what you allow. He has no control over the heart anchored in awareness. Need becomes addiction only when forgotten. Remembrance turns even weakness into worship. Ibn Arabi said, "The fire that once consumed you now lights your path. The same desire that enslaved you can guide you, if you let Allah reclaim it." 3. The eye is the first gate of discipline. The heart follows what the eyes admire. Every glance is a seed, and what you water with attention begins to grow inside you. Ibn Arabi said, "The gaze is the arrow of the soul. Once released, it rarely returns empty." What you look at shapes your thoughts, and what you think about shapes your desires. Discipline begins not with the hands or tongue, but with vision. The one who guards his eyes guards his peace. The eye is a doorway to the unseen world of emotion. One look can awaken longing, envy, or unrest. That's why the Quran commands, "Tell the believing men to lower their gaze." Allah is not restricting beauty. He is protecting the heart from drowning in it. Ibn Arabi wrote, "When the eye forgets its purpose, the heart forgets its home." What you allow through your eyes becomes the language your soul speaks in silence. The danger of the gaze is that it feels harmless. A single look seems small, yet every addiction, every fall begins with it. The eye writes stories the heart begins to believe. Ibn Arabi said, "Temptation does not strike with thunder. It begins with a glance." The Sufi knows that mastery over sight is mastery over self. The one who commands his eyes will soon command his thoughts. When the eyes wander without purpose, the mind loses its anchor. You start seeing life through comparison and craving. Everyone becomes either an object of envy or desire. Ibn Arabi taught that the unguarded eye turns blessings into burdens. The Sufi lowers his gaze not out of fear, but out of freedom. He wants to see creation through Allah's light, not through the fog of want. Guarding the eyes doesn't mean blindness, it means clarity. The Prophet ﷺ saw the world deeply, yet never through the lens of temptation. His vision was mercy, not appetite. Ibn Arabi explained that purity of sight is seeing things as signs, not as possessions. When you see a beautiful face, you whisper, "Subhanallah," not because you deny beauty, but because you recognize its source. The disciplined gaze trains the heart to separate attraction from attachment. The Sufi may notice beauty, but he lets it pass through him like wind through trees, touching, not trapping. Ibn Arabi said, "The lover of Allah sees beauty everywhere but belongs to none of it." Discipline is not denial, it's choosing depth over distraction. You don't run from beauty, you let it lead you back to the beautiful. Every time you look away for Allah's sake, something shifts inside you. That restraint becomes light, subtle, but real. Ibn Arabi taught that lowering the gaze polishes the mirror of the heart. What once reflected desire now reflects the divine. The energy you save from temptation turns into focus, and focus turns into nearness. The eye you control becomes the lamp that guides you. To discipline the eye is also to heal it. In a world flooded with images and illusions, every glance is a test of loyalty. Will you look to remember or to forget? Ibn Arabi said, "Modern man drowns not in sin, but in sight." The Sufi responds by slowing down, watching less and observing more. He sees with presence, not impulse. His gaze becomes an act of dhikr. When your eyes seek only Allah's pleasure, your vision expands. You start noticing divine details in everything. The curve of a leaf, the glow of dusk, the kindness in strangers. The same eyes that once trapped you in lust now free you in awe. Ibn Arabi wrote, "When the gaze purifies, the world becomes transparent. You no longer see through desire, you see through truth. In the end, discipline of sight is discipline of soul. Every guarded glance is an act of worship, every restraint a declaration of strength. Ibn Arabi said, "The one who closes his eyes to sin opens them to the unseen." The Sufi walks through the same world as everyone else, but his eyes no longer pull him down, they lift him higher, because the one who controls what he sees begins to see what others cannot. 4. Turn desire into dhikr. Desire by itself is not the enemy, forgetting Allah within it is. Every time you feel pulled towards something forbidden, that moment is not a curse, it is a signal. Ibn Arabi said, "The flame of desire burns only to remind you of the fire of love. The same energy that drives sin can become worship if redirected. When temptation arises, the Sufi doesn't run from it. He transforms it into remembrance. Dhikr means remembering Allah, but in its deepest sense, it means returning awareness to its rightful center. When your body wants something that your faith forbids, whisper Ya Allah instead of obeying it. That one remembrance shifts the entire battlefield. Ibn Arabi taught, each breath that calls his name turns poison into perfume. You can't always stop the feeling, but you can change its direction. Turning desire into dhikr is not about denial, it's about transmutation. The fire that once pulled you down now pushes you upward. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever leaves something for Allah, Allah replaces it with something better." Ibn Arabi explained that the better thing is not material, it's peace. The restlessness that once tormented you becomes calm because remembrance rewires the heart's hunger. When temptation comes, don't curse it, converse with it, ask it what it truly seeks. Often, you'll find that behind the craving for pleasure lies the craving for closeness. The Sufi whispers Allah's name until the heart remembers what it really wanted. Ibn Arabi said, "Every desire is a misdirected prayer, guided home." When dhikr fills the space of desire, longing turns into love. The lower self feeds on repetition, so repeat the opposite truth. Every time the mind says, "Just once won't hurt," answer, "Allah sees me now." Replace impulse with remembrance. Ibn Arabi wrote, "Dhikr dries the roots of temptation. The more you remember, the less the pull. Soon, what once felt like a storm becomes a passing breeze. You remain unmoved because your heart has found a stronger gravity. Desire loses its poison when met with light. You can't fight darkness by punching it. You must light a lamp. Dhikr is that lamp. It burns quietly, endlessly, inside those who persist. The Sufi keeps his tongue moist with remembrance so his soul never thirsts for sin." Ibn Arabi said, "Remembrance is water for the fire of lust. It doesn't erase desire, it cools it into devotion." Sometimes remembrance is not words, but awareness. Simply pausing before the act and remembering Allah's gaze upon you is dhikr. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Allah looks not at your forms, but at your hearts." When your heart whispers, "Ya Rabbi, protect me," even silently, the unseen shifts. Angels record that restraint as worship. Ibn Arabi called this hidden dhikr, the remembrance that never leaves the battlefield. The one who fills his heart with dhikr discovers a new pleasure, one untouched by guilt. The sweetness of obedience replaces the sting of regret. Ibn Arabi wrote, "The soul that remembers finds ecstasy in what others call restraint. That ecstasy is not bodily, it's spiritual intoxication. You stop craving moments of release because remembrance becomes your constant relief. To turn desire into dhikr is to reclaim your divine design. Allah created passion not to destroy you, but to drive you toward Him. When you remember Him while desiring, you polish the mirror of the heart until only His reflection remains." Ibn Arabi said, "The lover who remembers during temptation becomes the beloved. That's the secret of the path. Struggle transforms into intimacy. In the end, dhikr doesn't remove desire, it redeems it. Every forbidden thought becomes a chance for prayer. every temptation a test of loyalty. The Sufi lives among fire, yet does not burn because his remembrance is constant. Ibn Arabi wrote, "When Allah fills your desire, desire itself bows in worship. What once dragged you to the earth now carries you to the throne because you learned to turn craving into calling." 5. The reward of restraint is nearness. Every time you restrain yourself for Allah's sake, you walk closer to Him, even if no one sees it. Ibn Arabi said, "The unseen obedience builds unseen nearness." You might think nothing happened when you resisted, but the heavens recorded it as a victory. In silence, angels celebrate what your ego mourns. Restraint doesn't look glorious, but it shifts the soul into alignment with the divine. Restraint is not rejection of desire, it's refinement of it. You're not killing the fire within you, you're teaching it to burn in the right direction. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever leaves a desire for my sake, I will replace it with something better." Ibn Arabi explained that better means intimacy, that subtle closeness where you begin to feel Allah's gaze in every breath. That is the true reward. When you restrain yourself, you are not losing pleasure. You are trading it for peace. Pleasure ends, peace remains. Ibn Arabi wrote, "The one who denies himself for Allah's sake tastes a sweetness that no desire can match." That sweetness comes quietly, like dawn breaking in the heart. It's not excitement, it's serenity, a silence so full it feels like light. Each act of restraint polishes the mirror of the soul. Every time you say no to temptation, a veil is lifted. You begin to perceive things you couldn't before, subtle signs, divine whispers, deeper meanings in verses you've read 100 times. Ibn Arabi said, "The real speaks most clearly to the heart that has mastered its appetite." Restraint doesn't just purify the body, it awakens the spirit. Shaytan wants you to believe that resisting desire is a loss. He tells you you're missing out, you're suppressing yourself. But he hides the truth that what feels like deprivation is actually elevation. Ibn Arabi wrote, "When the lower self cries, the higher self rejoices." Every time you restrain yourself, something in you dies, and something far purer is born. The reward of restraint is not material, it's experiential. You start to sense Allah's nearness in the very moments you thought He was silent. After resisting a temptation, your dua feels sharper, your salah feels lighter, your heart feels watched, not in fear, but in love. Ibn Arabi said, "The real unveils himself most to the one who guards himself most." The closer you guard your soul, the closer He draws to it. Restraint transforms the battlefield of temptation into the classroom of love. Each struggle becomes a dialogue between you and Allah. Ya Allah, I want, but I choose you. That choice echoes in the unseen world. Ibn Arabi called it the conversation of the silent lovers, those who say nothing, yet speak volumes through self-control. That unseen surrender is among the highest forms of worship. The one who restrains for Allah's sake begins to feel His companionship in places others feel emptiness. The time once filled with guilt becomes filled with grace. Ibn Arabi said, "The abstinent man walks alone, but feels surrounded by presence. What he gave up outwardly, he gained inwardly, a quiet joy that no indulgence could ever match." That is the hidden nearness behind every no. Over time, restraint stops feeling like struggle. It becomes identity. You no longer resist because you have nothing left to resist. The desire itself has transformed. Ibn Arabi explained that when the heart matures in remembrance, what once tempted it now reminds it of Allah. You begin to love purity more than pleasure because you've tasted something higher. In the end, the reward of restraint is not simply paradise, it's proximity. The one who restrains himself now walks through the world with unseen wings. Ibn Arabi wrote, "When the servant says no for Allah's sake, the real says yes to His nearness." Each act of discipline builds a bridge between you and the divine. And when you cross it, you realize what you thought you gave up was never worth what you gained. Do not hate yourself for feeling what Allah created within you. Desire was never your enemy. Forgetfulness was. Ibn Arabi said, "Every passion is a mirror. Look into it, and you will find the face of your Lord hidden beneath the dust of longing." When you control your desire, you are not rejecting your nature, you are refining it. The same energy that tempts you can become the very light that elevates you if it's offered back to Allah in patience and purity. Remember, every time you resist temptation for His sake, a door opens in the unseen, one you may not see now, but angels do. Your struggle in silence is not unnoticed, it's worship. So the next time desire calls, don't run from it, rise above it, because Allah knows, He sees, and He rewards the one who chooses Him over every shadow of pleasure. That is not repression, that is mastery, the kind of mastery that turns weakness into worship.